Welcome to the Sideline Live podcast. Subscribe for more episodes and follow our social media at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. Today I'm delighted to welcome Kate McDaid to the podcast. Kate is a well-known nutritionist and currently works with athletes and individuals from around the globe. We had a great chat about her business, Nutrikate, nutrition, and a little bit about her own basketball career. I hope you enjoy. Hi Kate, thanks a million for coming on the podcast.
Not at all. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So before we kind of get started, if you kind of give yourself 20 or 30 seconds to just explain to the listeners kind of who you are in your sporting and professional kind of life.
Yeah, so my name's Kate McDaid. I'm a health and performance nutritionist and I run my own consultancy called Nutrikate, where I work with individuals, teams, corporates to kind of improve their health, well-being and performance. And then I play competitive basketball with Trinity Meteors. I'm playing with their recently promoted Superleague team, and I'm trying to play a little bit of football at the moment too for my sins.
Very good. So we'll get into that in a second. But with the podcast, what's going to happen is kind of before we kind of get into the background, what I'm going to do is what's called the Sideline 7. So it's the same 7 questions, or well, they potentially could change to all the guests. So it's thought-provoking / fire round. So obviously the listeners can compare the different answers to one another. So I'm going to start off with the first question, which would be, what is your favorite quote?
Okay, so apologies if I botch this. My memory isn't the May West, but one quote that's kind of struck out for me, I suppose, over the last number of years is a quote by, and I actually looked this up there recently, Eric Hansen's his name, but it's what if I fall, oh, but my darling, what if you fly? So I think for me that kind of has been a nice one, just because obviously there's when you're doing your own business or just in life in general, you take risks every now and again, and obviously there is that fear of failure, but I suppose that's kind of like the nice side of, well, success. And I think one thing I've learned over the years too, and I suppose this ties into it, is that there is no such thing as failure. Like I find if you take failure as a learning curve, it's actually a really positive and useful thing.
Yeah.
So between those two, they're kind of quotes I always keep in mind.
Brilliant. Yeah. Second question would be, what is the best sporting event you've been to? That can be here in Ireland or abroad. It's kind of up to yourself.
Yeah. Well, for me, it would probably have to be when Dublin ladies football team played against Cork in the All-Ireland final. I was on the sideline and just between the outcome, and this was in 2018, and the results and the kind of crowd, the atmosphere, everything, it was just amazing. So that definitely was a standout moment for me.
I'd say it was special as well because you're probably involved in the team, just to get that, you've been there since the grueling pre-season, seeing them go through championship, getting over those hurdles, and to finally kind of get the goal that they've been striving for, and they've been striving for since then. They've gone with 3 in a row. I'd say it was incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely phenomenal. Like, you get to know the girls, the management, like on a personal level too, and you see day in day out all the slog that everyone is putting in, and it's so nice, for the girls to get kind of their just desserts, and for them to get that result that day. So and even their extended family, and it means so much to everyone and the fans and everyone there. So it was really just really, really special and such a lovely thing to be part of.
And then kind of talking about your own career, what was the sort of biggest setback or challenge you've probably faced in sporting or business even?
Probably, I'm not gonna lie, COVID has been, well, I don't know if it's a setback, but like definitely a challenge. Like that has, it's something obviously that came unexpectedly, and there's so much uncertainty hanging over everyone's heads with it. So that probably for me has been the biggest challenge, I would say. I suppose this ties over into business and in sport. Another challenge is like just kind of keeping the faith, like, in yourself and your own abilities when maybe things aren't going as smoothly as you want to. So that can be testing and that can be a challenge. But between my teammates, my friends, my family, work colleagues, like I am fortunate with the people I have around me, and I think I someone said to me in the last number of weeks, you're an average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate that those 5 people in my life are sound and have their head screwed on, so they keep
Yeah.
my head somewhat screwed on too.
Brilliant. It's great to have that support network to get you through these sort of times that, that we've never faced, and even 100 years ago, you know, no one in our lifetime has experienced what we're going through at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's mad times, and I think it's been good in a way, to bring us back to the basics in terms of recognizing how important those relationships are in our life, and how important, like, just the basic things, like those around you, having obviously a roof over your head, like having your health, like things that we maybe like forget about because life is moving so quickly and
Yeah.
can be quite materialistic, and we can get caught up with things that really aren't important.
100%. And to kind of, let's say, go the flip side of that, what would be, your biggest achievement in your sporting career or in business as well?
Sporting career was definitely winning. I actually won it with Leicester, even though I'm not with them anymore. But when we won the National Cup there. It was on 2019. I'm so bad for dates, but recently enough, and that was amazing. That was like something on my bucket list, so to speak, of sport. Like, I have been playing basketball for years now, and I was always a freaking bridesmaid. So I was like, please give me the chance to play in a national cup final, and please let me get the goods. So that was a really, really special day for me, and the girls. And then probably my biggest achievement then away from sport would be Nutrikate. I think, like, that's something I've worked really hard on and continue to work hard on, but I love it, and I feel very blessed with how it's gone and whatnot. So yeah,
It's
that's
kind
my
of
pride
like
and joy.
it's kind of like one of those things, do what you love and you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, well, dear to love, and you freaking don't stop working or life is what I've realized. So they kind of sold me the dream, but in reality, it's a different ballgame. But
Yeah.
no, I do love it. You're right. Like, I mean, some days, I go into work and it's like, how do I get paid to do this? Like, I love it.
Yeah. Brilliant. And kind of looking back on, your professional and sporting career, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Probably, like, literally could probably write a novel for my 18-year-old self. But it would probably be just to back yourself, focus on yourself and back yourself.
Brilliant. And in terms of role models and people you look up to, in terms of, like, if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, so I have a few, for different reasons. Like, mainly the running theme amongst all of them are that they are extremely interesting, successful, and I feel like they would add a lot of benefit to, they'd be able to give me a lot of inside advice on kind of any realm of my life. So it would probably be, if I had my pick, it would be Michelle Obama,
Okay.
Brene Brown, Katie Taylor, or Steve Kerr. And I wouldn't
Okay.
have put Steve Kerr there before, but I watched the Michael Jordan documentary, actually,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
stood out to me. I thought he was just class.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they're my four. I just, and all in their own right, they're extremely interesting and have been extremely successful and in their own right. So any of them I'd take, Orla.
Brilliant. And the final question would be, if your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
Oh, geez, how big's the book? I don't know. Let's just say the beginning. I'd say, like, I mean, for me, there's a lot I, would like to achieve, and in both my own personal life, my own career. So I'd like to think that this is very much the beginning. Like, I've been doing a lot of figuring out I don't think that will ever really stop. But as I've gotten a bit older, and I've learned a lot about myself, and I've tried to learn about myself, which I don't know if that makes sense, but like, definitely in lockdown, I've really focused on my own personal development. Like, I think you can get so caught up in trying to develop, like, say, a business or get better at the sport you do or whatever it might be. And I felt like I was always running and busy, and
Yeah.
that I never really gave myself the time to like develop and grow. Or I suppose not as much as I would like to, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'd like to think that this is the beginning of my book, and there's plenty more to come.
Brilliant. So we've to expect big things now from Nutrikate.
Oh, hopefully.
Pressure's
That's the
on.
plan.
Pressure's on. So then in terms of, kind of going back to the beginning, let's say, of your sporting career, how did you sort of get involved in sport? Were your parents involved? Was it friends, family?
Yeah, so we were always encouraged to play sport growing up. Like, so I would have played like camogie and football in school. I never was very good at it. Mind you, I really kind of started, you know, I suppose getting good at sport when I went to secondary school, and basketball was the big thing in Clush Eastcon at the time. And it was my best friend's sister was trying to recruit first years, and she was going around the classes, like trying to get us all enthused about basketball. And I suppose everyone else was going along. We were told we were going to train for 3 times a week and then have games. And at 12 years of age, I thought that that would massively hinder my social life, that
Yeah.
I seemed to have conjured in my head. But I went along anyway because everyone else was doing it. So and before I knew it, I was playing basketball 7 days a week,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, started, seeing that I, could be good at this. If now I am someone who has like a lot of natural talent, but like I work extremely hard. So and I needed to do that because like there's always people who are very talented naturally, and I can't hold my hand up and say that
Yeah.
I am one of those people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it was really from there that I started playing competitively, and really working hard at something, and I suppose reaping the rewards of that hard work. Not always, but I got to play for Dublin and Ireland, and I'm still competing at a high level now. So yeah, so that's kind of how I got into the sport.
And what was that like to kind of represent your county and your country, in terms of your basketball and, kind of reaping those rewards of your hard work? What was that moment like, getting that goal or getting the satisfaction from your hard work?
Yeah, it was dead. Like, I know, like, definitely, like, yeah. I don't like, just from like when you got on the Irish team back in the day, or you're finding out about cuts, like you'd find out through a letter in the post.
Oh,
So
okay.
like, so that actually makes me sound so old. I was like, oh my God, you sound so old. But so you're waiting on that letter, and I suppose just like the relief that, like, oh my God, I made it over this hurdle, and then obviously to make it to the team, and make it on the team, and to be traveling to the Europeans, or traveling with the Dublin team. We got to go to Liège 2 years running. So like,
Okay.
just kind of, it was more of a relief more than anything else. And then when you were there and competing, you're trying to like, I suppose, take it all in. Yeah, it's just like, I mean, it's great. I probably have more appreciation for it now that I'm a bit older and probably a bit more mature in ways, because it was all kind of like, all happens in a way really fast, and
Yeah.
it's,
Hard to
you're
take it
in the
in.
thick of it.
Yeah.
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 Well, it definitely was for me. Like, some people maybe did take it all in, but I was kind of like, oh my God. But definitely I remember the Irish team, like, getting your jersey and with your name on the back. I was like that was for me. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Yeah.
So it's those little things at 15, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's amazing when you do get over those hurdles, because is so much uncertainty, I suppose, with getting there.
Yeah. And in terms of, get recognition, you recently got a small little shout out by Mr. Kelvin Troy, Irish Basketball Hall of Fame, and his daughter Mimi. And I think they called you a tough cookie. And I think you earned Mimi's title of toughest opponent, I think it was.
I saw this last night, and I was like absolutely buzzing, like literally beaming. Like, Mimi is certainly a tough lucky. And Kelvin Troy definitely was, and you know, huge respect for both of them, personally and in the sporting element too. So it was great to get recognised by the likes of those two. So I'm still beaming over here.
Brilliant. And then in terms of, you mentioned it before, you played at Trinity Meteors last year and you got promoted to the Super League. You know, what was that like, kind of going back to playing with Meteors? I know you grew up playing with Meteors. What was that moment like, you know, to make it to their National League and, you know, to get that promotion to the Super League?
Yeah, it was deadly. Like, I mean, at the beginning of every season, like you lay out kind of what you want to get from it. And that was definitely like our main aim. So to actually put in the slog and to reap the rewards of that, it was great. And then to do it alongside, you know, girls that you've grown up playing with, as well as, you know, I suppose people in management who, again, you've grown up alongside, and who have been so supportive over your career, and to see how much that means to them too, and for it all to pull together for all involved was just class. Like, I mean, it's, you know, like you know, it's like any kind of season there when you set out your goals and you achieve them. It's always a lovely feeling.
And I'm sure, like, it's like the end of a book, you know, and happy liver after. You know, you started with Meteors and you ended Meteors, you know, you brought them into the Super League. I'd say that was obviously a huge moment. And in terms of your own game then, what would be your sort of pre-game routine in terms of, you know, your meals and your music and, you know, warm up and stuff like that? What would you kind of do before a match?
Yeah, so I definitely, like, my prep for a match probably starts like a day and a half out. So that would like entail like my eating strategy, my hydration strategy. Similar to what I'd be telling the athletes to do themselves is, you know, I've gotten into a routine the day of a game where it's like my meals are all pretty similar. They will change depending on game time. So sometimes you're playing
Mm.
like middle of the day, others it's in the evening. So, and some days you're playing on Saturday, others on Sunday.
Mm.
The odd Friday actually, now that I think of it. So obviously you make adjustments for that, but you know, I just be looking to stay on top of my sleep too, and just to make sure, you know, that I've everything in the house that I need for that week to carry out my routine.
Mm.
So whenever my weekly shop is, to make sure that, you know, so I'm all prepped so that no matter what the week kind of throws at me, I know I have everything I need in the place that I need it to be.
Mm.
Um, I try and like, I try and, you know, have all my kind of homework done. So like with, I find it actually quite challenging with business in terms of depending, because my schedule, because I work with athletes a lot of the time too, my schedule like can be really full on around my game time. So you know, I just try and make sure that when I'm at training, I'm absorbing as much information as possible. If I need to take notes or reflect on something I need to be mindful of for the game, I'll do so in and around training time. And I'm be sure to like kind of touch base with that maybe the morning of, or if I need to chat to one of the girls, I will, just to be sure I'm on the right page. But I look to just focus on, you know, what I can control, and what my job is, and make sure I do that. So I absolutely love listening to some music on the way into a game. I'll have my earphones in. But then, you know, as soon as we're ready to warm up as a group, I'm, you know, earphones are out. But I'm still very much in my own zone, and
Mm.
just focusing on, right, Kate, what's your job today? What you need to get done, and what can I control? So
Mm.
yeah, so that's kind of a snippet of it. It'll be so different for everyone, but that's kind of,
Mm.
that works for me for the most part. So yeah.
Mm. And is there anything that you've maybe taken from athletes you've worked with? I guess you're in the unique position that you've worked with elite level athletes. Is there anything that you've seen them do that you said, oh, I'm going to try that and it's worked out well for you?
Well, I suppose like the biggest thing that I've learned over the years from athletes that I've worked in is, or worked with, is I suppose how to approach a game in terms of, you know, embracing what's around you. And I suppose how, like, you know, obviously we all know practice makes perfect, but like practicing as you want to play, and like being able to depend on that or rely on that. I suppose you've got the reassurance when you go into a game, no matter how big or small it might be, that I've I've done this 100 times, 1,000 times over. Like, it's no different. And I suppose approaching it in that kind of mature state and embracing it, like definitely as I've gotten older, like particularly like a huge wake up call for me was when I did get to the National Cup final. I hadn't been there in years, and I was like, these days don't come around, so like just freaking enjoy it. Like, how buzzed are you to be here, and just embrace that. Like, you get to play something that you've worked so hard for and that you love, so go out there and just play the game that you enjoy. You've done the donkey work, and you can kind of have that, you gain your confidence from that, and of course from the girls around you. So so I think really savoring the moment and backing all the work that you've done has been something that I've noticed really stands to.
And I think as younger players will always think, I've years ahead of me, I have multiple cup finals to come. I think when you kind of get to that older stage of your career, or you're not playing as much, you kind of realize, God, these days are really special. I might not be back here again.
Yeah. And even from, I didn't say it there, but like even from an injury perspective, like the amount of athletes I'm working with who are like, coming back from injury, or who have gone through in some cases horrific injuries, and that's not the way for a season. And even if you look at the likes of COVID now, like for some people, like they didn't even get to finish out their seasons, and things are still up in the air. Like, you really can't take these days for granted, because you just don't know. Like, so maybe you'll get to play, but maybe you'll never get to be back in the final position. Or maybe your career will be cut short due to injury, whatever it might be. So yeah, really like savoring the moment, I think is well worth it.
Yeah. And in terms of then, you recently began playing Gaelic football. How did you notice many of your skills overlapping, in terms of obviously the catching, how did basketball kind of go hand in hand with it?
Yeah, so I was kind of fortunate in a way that the basketball season ends and the Gaelic season starts, kind of pretty much. And so my fitness wasn't a problem in one way. Now, it was a total different ball game in terms of like, when I say fitness, like I had a nice baseline there, but I did find it challenging. But at least I wasn't starting from scratch. So as you said, like catching, hand-eye coordination, similar. I also found that, like, in terms of some of the zone work we might do in basketball, that was transferable, or even defense was transferable then in football too. And I think, like, even having experience working in a team environment and understanding roles, I'm still very much trying to understand my role in midfield. I don't know if the penny's fully dropped, but yeah, it's like knowing that everyone is working together, and strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. So I definitely think that they aren't transferable. The biggest thing for me was solos. Like, I mean, definitely when I started, sometimes still in my third season in, it's like, after my bounce is gone and I'm trying to get a solo in, it's like, oh my God, am I gonna nail this, or is it gonna go a few feet ahead of me? So that was the biggest challenge. But there's definitely transferables between the layout and some of the actual skills themselves, absolutely, which has been great. For me, it stood to me.
Yeah. And in terms of, I always find it funny, I play both club football and basketball, and I can always kind of spot the basketball and the football players in terms of certain players will catch the ball and straight away their bounce be gone, and their coach be going, saying, take your 4 steps, but they're so used to getting the ball and pushing it and kind of going. And I find with myself, I never bounce just with, let's say, bounce just my right hand. It's always a crossover in front of my body. It's a terrible habit, and it's defenders love when I do it because they nip in and get the ball, and I have to get rid of it. But it's an awful habit I do myself. And then in terms of, you're professionally, you work as a nutritionist. What would your diet be like in terms of, like, are you vegan, vegetarian, or do you eat meat and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I eat meat. I suppose, like, the aim of my diet is like to support, my day-to-day living, my day-to-day performance. So, I look to try and get plenty of variety in there through whatever, my meat, my whatever my protein sources are, and whatever my carbohydrate sources are, and my fruit and vegetables. And I'd probably look to have um again, it'll depend on if I'm training or not, but kind of, I always look to get my 6+ portions of fruit and veg in. I'd always look to make sure I'm hitting my protein requirements. My carbohydrate requirements would be really important, particularly if I'm going out training. So they would kind of like frame, I suppose, my day-to-day eating. And then obviously making sure I'm on top of my fluid intake. So yeah, so it's really just like being aware of how I'm feeling, what my week is like, what my training schedule is like, what work is like, and how can I support myself through the food and fluid I'm consuming on that front.
And in terms of, you would probably epitomize, practice what you preach. You're quite a good diet. In terms of then, your favorite food or even a cheat meal, what would be your sort of go-to?
So I have a mix. Like, I mean, I think it's really important. Like, I think, it's nice to include foods that aren't very, like, aren't really nutritious, but are very tasty. Like, at the end of the day, food is there to be enjoyed, and I think you can enjoy the likes of your chocolate or whatever it might be for you, and not be worrying about that you've enjoyed that. Like, that's not going to make you unhealthy, but it makes your diet sustainable. So for me, like, chocolate's my absolute favorite. Like, I love chocolate, and yeah, so that's definitely my go-to if we're talking about stuff that's not as overly nutritious, but it's certainly tasty. It's probably chocolate.
And in terms of then maybe a takeaway, what would be your go-to? Is it Chinese, pizza, Indian even?
I actually love Thai food.
Okay.
So Indian actually is divine as well, like Peshwari naan, like any night of the week. Like, I love Peshwari naan. So yeah, it's either or. We'd probably go between Thai and Indian if we were getting a takeaway. But I actually I cook an awful lot and I really enjoy it, so it doesn't really feel like a chore. So it's kind of, I rarely would get a takeaway just because I enjoy what I cook, and it's become like habitual now, so I don't even notice, like, in the kind of way that it's just another thing that I do.
Yeah, you're sort of out of the habit of maybe, on Friday, Saturday night ringing to get a takeaway properly.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't even be like the odd time. I absolutely might. Or if you're, the girls or whatever, we might opt for something like that. And but for the most part, I love throwing together something, and I try and challenge myself to, try different things, because that will not only stand to me, but then it stands to my clients too. So, so yeah, so I look to kind of push the boat out in the cooking front, myself anyway.
Brilliant. And then in terms of kind of maybe going back to college and, beginning to work in the professional world, did you ever want to work in the clinical area, or was it always, I'm into sport, I would love to be in sports nutrition?
Yeah, so that's a funny one, because in my undergrad I studied food science, and it was actually by default. I didn't get enough points. I worked really, really hard, and I just came up short in terms of the leaving certificate points system. And I got my third choice, which was food science. So my initial choice being human nutrition dietetics, like that, actually, if I'd gone down that route, like, I might be sitting here chatting to you about something completely different. Or maybe I wouldn't, I don't know. But that was that kind of clinical route was initially what I was going towards. Now, who's to say I wouldn't have gone on and done my master's in sports nutrition anyway?
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I suppose, because I was so heavily involved in sport and have been, and it's something I really enjoy and buzz off of, and I love working with athletes, and I adore my job. And that's not, I'm not always working and only working with athletes, but it is a huge part of my job. So I don't know, like, the clinical side is still something that I think about. I just think it's super interesting as well. And so it's not something that I'm going to maybe never go near, just more so out of interest more than anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose I've often wondered, like, oh, if I'd gone down the route I had thought I would be going down if we'd be talking here at all, or if I'd have Nutrikate, or what might have been. So so I think everything works out in some shape or form, or it works out for a reason, and I'm happy with how mine's worked out. So yeah, I won't park the clinical side entirely, but yes, it's definitely something that I've thought about anyway.
Yeah. And then in terms of, you did a master's in the UK, coming out of that, did you set up Nutrikate straight away, or did you work for someone else, or how did that sort of start out?
Yeah, so when I was completing my master's, coming towards the end of it, at Loughborough University, I came across an internship for a consultancy over in the UK, and I applied for that. Like, to be honest, when I think back, or like, I was so naive. Like, I was like, I'll go over, do my master's in sport and exercise nutrition, come home, get a job. Like, that just didn't really think much about it. And then as I was like over there, and started realizing that it's actually not going to be that easy there, love. So like, you'd want to start looking at how you can give yourself the best foundation, I suppose, for your career. So I came across this internship, and I got it. And so I worked over in the UK then nearly 2 years after I finished my master's. So I did the internship for 9 months, then became full time in that consultancy, working with athletes, general population, different teams, corporates, similar to what I do now, actually. So it was really nice because I got like a taste of so many different areas, and also had mentors there too, which was great. And then I became senior health and performance nutritionist there, before I decided to come back to Ireland in 2017 and set up Nutrikate. So I got a lot of kind of practical experience, which I think is so important, because I suppose as I got into the thick of things, I realized that the academic side and the science side is so important, but like, so too is being able to translate that information, or to be able to take information that's actually relevant and be able to pick through that for real life application. So I got a nice kind of practical I suppose experience in before ever setting up Nutrikate, which was great.
Brilliant. And you touched, and you touched on it there briefly about, mentors and stuff like that. Did you ever have, a specific mentor for your business, or someone, you looked at, like another nutritionist, and kind of said, I like what they're doing, I'd love to do something similar?
Yeah, so like, I've been very fortunate, like over the course of my career, that like anyone who I've asked for help or for advice, like they've been very forthcoming. And I think anyone kind of listening, who is maybe looking to get into that area, like, don't be afraid to ask for help, because more times than not, people are more than happy to help you. And definitely for me, like, looking back, like, anyone asks me for help, like, I remember distinctly being in their position. I'm like, oh my God, I know how you're feeling. It's a scary world out there. But I'm more than happy to lend advice if they feel like it would help. But like Daniel Davey was great to me over the years for and still is, for advice. Lauren Delaney, who actually was a basketball coach of mine, and she's gone on to have an extremely successful career in nutrition. Too. They've been, two people who have been great, like, listening, advising, and then there's like multiple people who have been great too, and have pitched in, and who've helped me along the way. And I've been very, very fortunate on that front. And even like reaching out to people within kind of the industry and network, like, people, as I said, are very forthcoming with with help and advice, and it's great even just to build your network, because it's quite like small in the nutrition world. So even like getting to chat to other practitioners and see what they're doing, and sharing experiences, like, at the end of the day, it's going to make each and every one of us better at what we
Yeah.
do. So I think that's a really important part, is even if you don't need help necessarily, even just to reach out and chat and have a discussion. Like, there's a lot to learn from one
Yeah.
another, and I think, you know, anyone who I've come across has been more than happy to do that. So I feel very lucky
Yeah.
to get to meet the people I do on a day-to-day basis.
And then in terms of, you know, the people you're working with, are you mostly working with teams, or do you work with a lot of individuals as well? Are they always athletes, or are they, you know, general day to day, you know, normal business people and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I've been asked quite often, or just over the last number of weeks, like in particular, um, you know, okay, do you only work with athletes, or like, will you work with me? Yeah, I don't just work with athletes. I work with, you know, people who are looking to lose weight, gain muscle mass, who want to improve, you know, how they feel on a day-to-day basis, or their overall health. And then, of course, I do work with the teams or athletes who come out of their own kind of off their own back, who just want extra support. And then, you know, I do a bit of the corporate side too, so delivering seminars, workshops, doing drop-in clinics. So yeah, so it's really mixed. And my colleague Lisa is there with me now. So between the two of us, we kind of work in those, and kind of that varied, kind of those varied areas, which is great. It keeps things different and exciting. And yeah, we're very fortunate to get to work with the people and the companies and the teams that we do. So it's great.
Yeah. And then in terms of, you know, you're well known for working with athletes and teams. What would be, you know, the sports that those teams play? Is it always, you know, basketball, Gaelic football, or are there any sort of other sports that you've kind of come across and worked with?
Yeah, so I suppose like I'd work with the Dublin senior ladies team and the Longford senior men's team from a football perspective. And as you mentioned, I've worked in basketball too, with some of the Irish teams. But then I've got, you know, a handful of athletes, you know, in rowing, handball, soccer, rugby, golf. So it is nice and mixed, and it's good because like, you know, I get to work, or to, you know, to delve into different areas. They don't, you know, they're not all the same. They don't all have the same needs. Yeah, um, in many different ways, and even to continuously need to learn about more and about more different areas is great. So it's really nice and varied. So it's yeah, I love it.
And then in terms of, you touched on it briefly, you're working with Dublin senior ladies and the Longford men's. How do you kind of get involved? Do you reach out to them, or do they kind of come to you? How does that sort of work there?
Yeah, it's a mix, actually. So I was put forward for one of the gigs, and then I like literally knocked on the door. Like, I knew with the ladies, like I knew they weren't working with anyone, and obviously I knew it could benefit them, to have someone look at their nutrition side. So I actually knocked on their door, in that instance, whereas I would have been put forward for the nutrition, or for the Longford gig. So yeah, and I suppose it's now I'm very fortunate that over the last number of years I've, you know, built up kind of what's the word? I can't think of the word. I've built up
Your contacts or network kind of thing?
my network, and kind of my that yeah that's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I built up my reputation. That was
Yeah.
it. Getting there. Um, you know, in the area of sports, or even from my one-to-one clients. So now it's word of mouth that's kind of puts me forward for a lot of the work I do too, which is really nice. To kind of be on the receiving end of that.
Mm. And then in terms of, you know, your normal schedule with those teams, you know, are you always present at training? You know, what would be your role, let's say, at training versus match day, and kind of that lead up to the matches?
Yeah, so it depends on the team you're working with, kind of what point of season you're at. But you know, you wouldn't need to be at every training session. I think it's definitely important to be at some, to because a lot of the time, like, that's a nice time to just to have a chat with an athlete, or if an athlete has a query, they can ask you there and then, and they get sorted. And that's actually one really important part of my job, is to build a rapport with the people I'm working with. So whether they're athletes or not, it's so important that you can build kind of that trust with them, so I can have maximal effect with that person. So yeah, you'd be at a handful of training sessions, and you might, depending on the team, organize their post recovery meal, or make sure that they have shakes available, whatever it might be. And that's all organized. And then on game day, it'd be kind of similar. You're there if anyone has is worried about anything in particular, or the odd time an athlete might their tummy might be kind of struggling, maybe from nerves or whatever it might be, or if there's anything out of the ordinary for them, you're there to kind of give them reassurance or guidance. You make sure, again, post match meals are sorted and looked after, and everyone's well taken care of. Make sure that half time the dressing room is set up as it needs to be, from a fluid perspective or whatever you might have available to the team. And the same with directly after. I was going to speak about Irish there, Trish. I was going to say, I don't know where that came from. Directly after the game, that they have, the girls or the lads have exactly what they need to optimize their recovery. So, it's same but different in ways. But I suppose, just making sure everything runs like clockwork is a really big part of the job, and that everyone has the kind of reassurance and the confidence. So it's like one less thing that they need to be worrying about before they go out and play.
Yeah, and in terms of then with COVID and kind of, all these famous Zoom calls, what is your current role with them? Are you in constant communication with them, or was there kind of a break in terms of waiting for the season to be kind of put in stone that it was going ahead?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the team. Like, I mean, I work with a number of teams, so it kind of, a lot of it was kind of put on hold, or if you might do little bits and bobs just to kind of keep teams engaged and ticking over. So say online cook-alongs was a really big thing, and it's actually something that we're still doing. So whether it's on a once-off kind of basis, or with teams that we're working with more regularly, and they've been great, because it kind of gives players kind of the practical side of things, so it invests them in confidence in terms of putting something nice together that actually is handy to do, really tasty, and will stand them way after they're finish their career in sport. So that's been great. I suppose it really depends, and it has depended on the team, and but I think every kind of team that I've worked with, if they're still not on a break, they definitely went on a break, because I think with COVID, irrespective of whether you're playing sport or not, like, it's been very challenging, like on a personal level, I think, for everyone, because it's so bizarre. Like, we never could have prepared for this, and things did change overnight, and they're kind of still changing very sporadically. So it's definitely challenging on a mental as much as something else. So I think it's really important for us, as backroom staff or whatever it might be, that we recognize that, and you can give people kind of breaks when they need it, and time to step away and just be take whatever time they need.
And then in terms of your own, you have a lot more time in your hands with the current pandemic. You started your Thursday takeover. Where on your Instagram page? Where did that idea, sort of come out from? Was it always something you wanted to do, and you just kind of said, I've time in my hands, I may as well grab it,
Yeah, well, actually, I was asked to do a takeover for a page on Instagram, and then I was like, this is actually a really nice idea. Like, I was playing with the idea of like a podcast for a while. A friend of mine really wants me to do something on YouTube, and I was like, oh, like, it's so time consuming. I hate to start something and not be able to manage it, or stretch myself too thinly and be stressing out necessarily. So I kind of looked at kind of my schedule, you know, what would work best, but what would give my audience, you know, really like useful or insightful information, or add, you know, something different. I think again, going back to kind of COVID and it all being so uncertain and kind of just a bit like, ugh, in general, I was like, well, what might be interesting might, you know, be add some light to anyone's kind of, you know, dark days or whatever it might be. So yeah, I just thought, having experienced doing a takeover myself, and kind of, I thought it was a nice idea to give people an insight into someone else's life. And you know, because I think like everyone is so interesting, so that's why, like, I love, like, I talk about building rapport and that being so important by my job, but I literally love chatting to people. Like, I just love knowing their story. I love you know, knowing, you know, what kind of has driven them to where they are now, or yeah, and no matter what kind of their achievements are or aren't on paper, I just think everyone is so interesting. And
Yeah.
so I was like, this is a really nice way to allow someone like to share an insight into someone else's life for viewers. And you know, I always take something from the takeovers. I think again, there is always something to take from people, and I just hope that, you know, my own audience on the Nutrikate page are taken from it too. And you know, the feedback has been great. Like, it does seem to be working nicely. I've been very, very grateful with who or, you know, and so blessed to have those who have had on my takeovers. You know, everyone's been great for giving me their time and putting in so much effort. So yeah, it's been a really enjoyable process, and it's yeah, one I've learned a lot from too.
100%. I love tuning in on the Thursdays to see who it
Oh,
is.
good.
I love the way the highlights are there, so you can go back. In particular, Anne Marie Kennedy, I think, the sports psychologist.
Yeah,
I took a lot from her takeover, just specifically because I
she's
have a
class.
I have a huge interest in sports psychology, and you know, the tips and advice she gave were so applicable to myself and my own sporting life and personal life as well. And in terms of your guests, you know, you've such a wide variety. Are you just asking, you know, people you don't know, or are they clients? How do you kind of get the ideas for the guests?
It's actually been like a mix. So, like, I have been very fortunate to work with like great people over the years. So, like, I've taken, you know, I've banged on a few of their doors and be like, hey, I think you're fab. So can you just show that to everyone else, please? um, so it's been, yeah, a mix of people I've worked with, you know, clients or colleagues. It's, you know, been friends, friends of friends. So yeah, that's kind of how I've been navigating through. Or indeed, if you know, there's like people who I think are just really interesting, I just kind of chance my arm, even if I don't know them, and go, hey, would you mind giving
Yeah.
me a full day of your life, please? But people have been great. So like, I mean, just yeah, a very pleasant experience so far.
And then in terms of, you know, reaching out and building connections, if you could work, let's say, with any team or even an athlete in the world, who would it be and why?
Yeah, so actually, I would have loved, if I could go back in time, I would have loved to have worked with the Chicago Bulls team when
Oh,
Michael
okay.
Jordan,
Yeah.
Scottie Pippen, and everyone is like, that just looked unbelievable. But I also would actually love to work with the likes of like the Irish women's rugby team. I love rugby as a sport. I find it really interesting, and from a nutritional side of things, like, there's so many areas to cover, and you know, obstacles to overcome. And I'd love to work with a team like that. Yeah,
Mm.
it'd be great.
And in terms of those elite level teams, and you see a lot of players at intercounty and in the NBA, you know, going towards, let's say, vegan, vegetarian diet. Is that something that, you know, you've seen maybe a lot of your clients do, or would you sort of recommend it in terms of the sporting benefits? In terms of, you know, they say Chris Paul is a big example of it. He says, you know, since I've gone plant-based diet, I don't get tired you know, with the same workouts that I do. I'm fresh legs like I've never had before.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one, because I have a handful of clients, not too many, that, you know, what might be vegetarian or vegan. But I think the biggest thing, like by and large, most of us don't eat enough plants, full stop. And plants are like amazing for our overall health and well-being. I think, we're when we hear kind of statements similar to that, or athletes advocating for a particular diet, like we do really need to take it with a pinch of salt. What was their diet like? I think beforehand. So I think that's a big element of it. Like often going kind of plant-based, it requires more effort from the individual. They put more time into their diet, and they make better choices. It makes them include more nutrient dense foods, and it can be very rewarding for that person if that's kind of the outcome for them. So I think in general we should all probably focus on eating more plants, full stop. But I don't think one particular diet is necessarily better for another person. Like it's very individual based, and it really depends on who's in front of you, and what their needs are. So if I've got someone come to me, or any of my athletes who have adopted a vegan or vegetarian approach, for whatever reason that might be, that's fine. My job is to make sure that they understand, well, what might be missing, or what do we need to be more conscious of in our diet. Do we need to supplement if we can't get that in through our diet? So I think if anyone's listening that is going to go down that route, for whatever reason that might be, you absolutely can get a lot of value out of it, but you do need to be aware that by cutting out a large amount of food or options, that needs to be taken into account in terms of there's nutrients that I'm cutting out here. How can I make sure that they're in my diet? So so I think I think it's very much down to the individual and what works best for them. But I don't think you need to go necessarily the whole hog to be healthy. But for a lot of people, it can certainly make them make healthier choices, and which support their health better than what they would have been doing.
And in terms of then, you see a lot of individuals that may have a coffee before a game, like hours before a game. What would be your sort of opinion? Would you recommend it, or would you kind of say maybe stay away from it, or does it all again just depend on the individual?
Yeah, like any recommendations I make, it definitely is based on who is in front of me, like what are their needs, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. Like on the note of kind of coffee or caffeine being the stimulant there, like that is and has been proven to support performance and be a performance aid. So again, that is something that quite a number of my athletes use. Not all of them use it, but a lot of them do, to kind of get I suppose just to aid the performance and help them that bit more. So again, it'll just depend. Even in terms of caffeine, like the dosage and stuff like that, like that will change depending on the person. Do they drink a lot of caffeine or coffee or teas, or do they consume caffeine on a day-to-day basis? That will have an impact on how receptive they are towards the caffeine supplement. Or do they never use caffeine? Are they going to be very sensitive to it? So so whether you use it or not is very much down to the individual and where they're at. And if you are using it, again, it's down to the individual in terms of, okay, well, how much do I need to prescribe for them? But similar to any supplement, like, I mean, you have to get the foundations right when it comes to your diet. So if you're not doing, the basic stuff correctly on a day-to-day basis, like your recovery, like your fueling, like caffeine isn't going to just make everything okay. It definitely can help, but that's what we're looking for after we know we've nailed our fueling strategy, we've nailed our recovery strategy, our diet is giving us all the vitamins, minerals, nutrients that we need regularly, we're getting enough sleep, our hydration's on point, and then we'll start looking to add in stuff like caffeine if we need to, or if the athlete wants to.
So the important bit is, building that foundation and base, and then sort of adding the likes of caffeine and maybe supplements on top of that base.
Definitely. Like, I mean, a big thing for athletes is eating enough for their performance, full stop. So like even working and figuring that out with athletes, and understanding their energy demands, and then translating that to them and showing them what that looks like that needs to be looked after. And that's not something that's necessarily great or done very well in general. And that's, so you're looking to really pare back and nail all the basic elements, and then you look to supplements at the end. But yeah, that's after you've got the right amount of energy, the right breakdown of nutrients, and your timings on point. And as I said, like other lifestyle factors too, like sleep, hydration, and just on the note of supplements, like if you are an athlete who is taking supplements, like it's so important to go for a high quality supplement company, and one that, particularly if you're elite level, it's really important that you're opting for supplements that are informed sport approved, like to reduce your risk of there being any, I suppose, banned substances or contaminants in the supplements that you're taking. So there's always that risk too. So that's why you don't want to be prescribing anything willy-nilly, if there's no need.
So it kind of sounds like, education is nearly as important as the nutrition. It's knowing, what am I putting into my body, knowing, am I taking the right thing? Is it the correct supplement? Am I allowed to take it?
Yeah, education is so key. Like, it's so important, and that's what whether it's an athlete I'm dealing with or general population, no matter what the goal is, like I am looking to educate that person. Like my job is to make them not need me anymore. Like, I'm looking to empower them to make their own informed decisions, to get in touch with their needs, and understand that they are the individual that they need, and get a feel for what really works for them, what doesn't. So education is so important, so that they can they get a good understanding as to what their needs are at different points of the season, or at when if their goals change or whatever it might be. So yeah, education is so key.
And then in terms of we're finishing up now, the last sort of question would be, what would be the the biggest nutritional or performance myths that you've ever heard? I've heard a lot of cutting out dairy and like cutting out bread. Is there any like big ones you've heard you're like, oh my god, what are they at? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, there's so many. Like, I mean, I think the biggest thing with nutrition, like if there's a silver bullet or a magic pill, like, or if it sounds too good to be true, like it usually is. So, but like, I mean, there's loads there. This idea of, good and bad when it comes to food, like, that's something that I really try to move away from with my clients. Like, I mean, there's no one food that makes you unhealthy, or I suppose the poison is in the dose. It's kind of moving away from this moral approach to food, and looking at gaining a good foundation and a good framework in your diet, and knowing that, and we mentioned it earlier, like adding in foods that aren't overly nutritious, but like are really tasty is okay. Like, it's not going to make you automatically healthy the same, or unhealthy the same way that having an apple doesn't make you all of a sudden be super healthy either. Like, you need to look at the bigger picture. So yeah, like, I mean, I could go on all day about all the myths, but there's no set food that's going to is inherently bad or inherently good. It's about getting a good foundation, and you can kind of be flexible with that.
I'd definitely be one of those after maybe a takeaway, have an apple. Oh, I feel great. That's the nutrition aim for the day. I'm very guilty of that myself. Yeah, 100%. Well, Kate, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks a million. If you'd like to kind of tell the listeners where they could follow you on, like, say, Instagram, Twitter, and maybe your website as well.
Yeah, so you can get me at nutrikate.com, and my Instagram is nutrikate_com, and my Twitter is Kate_Nutrikate. So all fairly similar and hopefully simple.
Perfect. So if you are into nutrition and want to kind of improve your own diet, make sure to follow Kate. And Kate, thanks a million for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
Not at all, Orla. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thanks so much for the invite.
massive thank you to Kate for coming on today, and I just want to wish her and all of her teammates at Trinity Meteors the best of luck this season as they return to the Super League. If you are listening on Apple Podcast, make sure to leave a rating and a review, as it does help the podcast to grow. Subscribe for more episodes, and I will catch you in the next one. Slán.